Welcome to Hit Podcast, H.I.T, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. As we do every week, we're dropping into your feed with what I hope are bite-sized, digestible, but really interesting conversations going on in the space. This week's episode will be no exception. This week's episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions. And without any further ado, I bring on the dear and lovely Dr. Brandi Stankovic. How are you, Brandi? I'm
good. How are you?
I'm good. You're in rarefied multi-episode guest air here, but by popular demand, not my choice, actually. The fans clamoring, banging down the email inbox, demanding.
Thank you to all your fans, and potentially you and I have a conversation we need to have if it's not by your choice. I mean, yes. Come on.
Yeah, no, that's right. Well, it's, you know what? You're right, and I'm just playing cool, and it is by both popular demand and because I just, in all the years that we've either shared the stage together or I've come on after you or vice versa, just every time you're talking, honest to God, it's just I'm hanging on every word, and I'm so grateful that you will take time of your schedule and give of your wisdom to us and the listeners again. So truly, thank you.
Thank you, and congrats to you on this podcast and all the things that you guys have going there at Montage as well. So I'm really excited to be here.
That's kind of you. Thank you. Last time we talked, not only have you successfully ran your own podcast and book, but you were like receiving like Woman of the Year award and Credit Union Hall of Fame and like being flown to Africa to change lives. So I appreciate this, and I guess real recognized much realer.
Speaking of, and I don't know if this is potentially excuse the listeners here, but I have a couple boys, and one of them is a huge soccer player and fan. And you may know that your illustrious host is also a huge fan and world-renowned player, I think, at this point, and coach and dad coach. But what I wanted to say to you is my son is in dire need of time with Toby. So we'll have to make that happen as well.
Listen, if you're going to give of your time for this podcast, the least I can do is figure out some sort of a Zoom remote goalkeeping training session. It would be my pleasure.
I love it.
Speaking of forgive the listener, last time we were together, I was coming off a conference and therefore in fancy clothes, and I was made fun of by my dress shoes, for my dress shoes by your son, who is as witty as they come, and then I, in a fit of frustration, kicked his ball on the roof. So hopefully the next session goes better.
Honestly, one of my favorite stories ever. But yeah, I think he said he called them your tap shoes or something.
He did call them tap shoes, which cut a little deep.
But for everyone listening, Toby did Amazon us a new ball since we forever lost the other one.
Thank you. And it was not an actual intentional huff and that I kicked it onto the roof with. It inadvertently made it on the roof, and that makes me laugh. That's not a lot of what we came to talk about today, Brandi. But yet again, I think this is what good connections can mean. You get into a conversation and you're just in that flow state where you lose time. And I think that you do a wonderful job of helping organizations get themselves there. Frankly, you speak on so many really fascinating topics. I'm actually interested to hear, without me kind of putting my finger on the scale, what are some of the things, just kind of your ear to the ground, and when you're out there and you're talking, what are some things that are just fascinating you and the people you're talking to these days?
Well, this is an interesting year that we're in, right? I mean, this is a very relevant podcast. You're talking about things that are happening right now. And so with that in mind, the political environment is wild and madness and wow. And we'll see how that plays out for all the organizations that are listening and watching in their regulatory environments, and what that means moving forward, and some of the actions that they'll have to take in each of their individual states in lots of different areas. So we definitely have our finger on the pulse in that regard, in thinking about what's going to happen with DEI, what's going to happen with some of our other consumer protections in financial services specifically. So there's a lot of discussions around that. One of the things that I have been on a soapbox about lately is the sensationalized news that we have.
Yeah.
And as you know, is
in either direction, by the way.
Yeah. In every direction, yeah. Exactly. And sometimes wildly made up, right? And it's not even like a political conversation we're having now. It's just more of a, how do you navigate and actually find facts? So as an organization, if I need to execute on something, or you hear about something, where do you go to actually get the facts? And that's difficult. I was working in Washington, D.C. last week, and we were talking about, do you remember encyclopedias?
Yeah.
I would imagine there are people that are listening today that don't even know what that is, right? And for anybody that's
you mean
really
like the book Wikipedia thing?
Yeah, right. Do you remember the salesman that would come door to door?
Yeah,
Well, if
you
you
could
think
only afford
about
the
it,
vowels, so I was really well versed in like Australia and then Ethiopia, and then I picked back up
yes,
in like
yes.
India. Yeah, my
Hmm.
geography was great. Yeah,
And with the sets, we couldn't even do that anymore because news is so different. It's like we're rewriting different sets of history,
yeah.
and so it's challenging from an organizational standpoint on how you navigate this, both with what we need to do as institutions, but also with the overall morale and feeling of the teams. So that's something that's definitely
Well, what do we
happening.
need to do as institutions?
I would say from a team development standpoint, it's a balance of tough love and continuing on the efforts that are aligned with your vision and values, right? So if your organization lives true to a certain set of values that happens to include some things that are shifting and changing in this environment, then continue true to those values and continue true to those value statements, and then have a little tough love with our team, saying that we've got to push through. We have to continue to serve our clients, our members, and each other, and push through even if they are difficult or exciting times for people.
So something that comes to mind that might not be necessarily where your head was going, but it's kind of what I heard between the words there is, let's say you're an organization that went out of your way to talk about inclusion in recent years when it might have been popular,
Right.
and now it's slightly less popular, or it's in a different spot, I would say,
Right.
in the zeitgeist. And so is
Hmm.
that what you mean, where you're just like, hey, no, we're sticking to these principles and things like that? Is
Yeah,
that kind
I
of where you're
think
getting at?
if it aligns, like you said, if it aligns with their vision or mission, I think that. So, personal example, I work for the Nevada system of higher education, and Nevada hasn't taken a stance necessarily yet on what's going to happen with DEI programs because there was a freeze on government-funded DEI programs, right? And so, with that, we as adjunct faculty are taking our own approach based on what is in the textbook and what we have as our value set and how we teach business and where that interweaves into business, right? So it's not a topic of everyday conversation, but it certainly is when we talk about the 1964 Civil Rights Act, when we talk about discrimination, sexual harassment, et cetera, and creating a really safe and effective work environment. And so I have chosen this semester, at least until there is more definitive guidance or structure what the organization is at, to continue in my value set and what I'm doing as a teacher, as a faculty member, as a human. And so talking about the importance of diversity, talking about the importance of equity and inclusion. And so it's an interesting time because sometimes we take terms and they end up having different meaning to different people.
Mm.
And when the feelings behind them, we're all in it together.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting, and you know, I guess we don't need to hang in the pocket if there's other things on your mind, but I'm curious to hear you kind of unpack a little bit, because I think you're right. I think that, you know, words have a way of shifting and moving. I mean, even the word woke was like
Mhm.
basically reserved for, I don't like it's not Macy Gray, but like a good song, and the like kind
Yeah.
of culture of, you know, hey, this is important, and it was sort of a slang word, and then it turned into like a bludgeon to kind of make fun of
Oh,
people with, right? In
right.
short order, in 10 years type of a thing.
Right.
And so I'm interested because when people were trumpeting some of the values behind just the dictionary words of diversity, equity, inclusion,
Sure.
you're even able to speak to the cold business rationale behind it, about how, hey,
Right.
some of like the statistical best ideas come from a table with lots of different people here, or
Perspective. Sure.
some of the folks, you know, I know that you're in financial institutions, you're in lots of spaces, but you know, have a big footprint there where you're saying, hey, we might be serving members or tellers of maybe a very specific, you know, minority group. So having that voice in this room would be important for the following reasons. So there's a business end game to it. And so I wonder, you know, as you kind of maybe help us in this mid-ish 2025 timeframe, and we wrestle with a word being redefined,
Right.
so some of the rationale and the teachings and some of the stuff you're, you know, believing in and talking about.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of diversity has been around for a very long time, right? I mean, if you think about diversity, just means different. And so we come from very diverse teams, and serving a West Coast or a California audience, as many of your clients and listeners do, is a very diverse demographic, right?
Yeah.
And so diversity has been around, and we've struggled with it. We've been challenged by it. We've worked within it, and we've tried to nurture it in business for a long time. And then come 2020, and there was a lot of social injustice that occurred. and kind of catapulted some of these conversations. And to some, those conversations needed to be had, and we're glad that they had them. And others, it was something that they've been instituted for years and years, right? And then there was a third group potentially that was a bit more performative in, I feel like I should be doing this because everybody else is. And then along comes this DEI kind of clumping these three words together of diversity, equity, inclusion, and then it becomes a meaning of its own. Or it could have a interpretation depending on the region of the United States, depending on the global presence, perspective, et cetera. Yeah. And when in reality, diversity is good for business. You said it. We've been talking about it for years and years. Equity is just about making sure that we both end up. I love to use the reference of golf. So there's obviously a difference between the pro tee, the ladies tee, the women's tee, because junior tee, because we're biologically and with our capacity and capabilities different, and it gives us the chance to all hit the ball into the fairway, right? So I think that that's the concept of equity, and people then kind of shift that over and cross that over with equality, and then there's conversations all around that. And inclusion is also just the right thing we do in organizations, create a safe environment for social change, for productive work, for efficiency, for effectiveness, for growth, right? We want inclusion all around. So these words are already happening and should be happening in our organizations. And any non-use of those words, or the opposite, would be exclusion, right? It would be something that most of us aren't standing for. And so at this point in time, I think it's just taken a path of its own. Now, that doesn't mean that either of us are taking a stance on what decisions were made in different organizations, what was right, what was wrong, what we could have done better, and maybe how people took that term too far or provided dollars for different things too far. That isn't a place.
That's not what we're litigating today. Yeah, exactly.
Right. But I do believe in that we are different, and different is beautiful, and creating an environment that employees feel safe is just the right thing to do.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I wanted to hang in that pocket before we move on with these, because I've heard you speak on this topic, many times over the years. I think you do a really good job of advocating for the multitude of different reasons why at least the conversation should be happening, and people can do with that as they wish. So thank you for letting us kind of dive into that a little bit. You do a lot in strategic planning. You do a lot in helping organizations figure out their bums from their elbow, for lack of a better word. And this is Brandi, actually. We can go back to figuring out your ass from your elbow. I forgot that you're my
or sometimes I use my elbows to get people back in line. I think
all-time favorite blooper is you swearing last time on the show and being like,
telling people how to kick and get off. And can I cuss on your?
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
I gotta get here.
What's funny is that I'm gonna do unnecessary bleeps along the way that made it seem like you said things that were way worse. I don't know if we're allowed to swear yet or whatever, but you help organizations figure out up from down in lots of cool strategic ways, and I'm curious if you've got any kind of takes, things that you've been talking about that's come up a couple times, recurring themes, interesting nuance.
Well, one of my favorite things right now, and I actually have a little kind of side story about it from yesterday, but is artificial intelligence and the just absolute, you remember the Kool-Aid man bursting through the wall?
Dude, totally.
Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Through the wall of artificial intelligence has become. It's been there in the behind the scenes the last several years. We're well aware that was Siri and different things like that. But how much is starting to get instituted in our operations is wild, and in our personal lives. So yesterday I was taking a look at old blogs and writings I had done, and I don't know, getting a AI book helper writer thing, playing around with artificial intelligence has helped me to write a book, and I thought we'll just see what happens. So I'll keep you posted on that one. But
so you're dumping old thoughts and blogs that you've created into an AI bot to say, hey, can you stitch a lot of my own thoughts and ideas into what might look like a book?
Yes. So I said, research me, ask me questions. If you have any about me, look at my old articles so you can identify my tone.
Did it just like sigh and go, are you well? I'm just kidding.
It's like, seriously, another article about this? No. So the first thing, it picked up some video, probably my bleeper reel. And it was a little too casual. And I'm like, let's not take it that casual. Let's make it from more of an informed space. Here's some examples. Send it, gave it some links. And it works with you. So it takes management, but it's kind of fun. It sucked a couple hours out of my day yesterday.
Dude, totally. Yeah. That's fascinating. I was actually going to ask you, when you talk about AI, how much you're using it daily. And mainly let me ask you too, because obviously your doctorate and all of your sort of experience, but I don't know that I've touched on yet, your vast experience specifically in human resources departments and HR consulting and in the HR world. So you have a unique maybe take on this. Where do you see AI in HR, helping HR, bursting through the door like the Kool-Aid man?
Yeah. Well, I think we need to be, in a lot of different places. Some specifics are in writing policy, in selecting, in handling and reviewing resumes. I mean, these are ones that already exist, right? In helping to draft education, in utilizing education, in helping kind of coach staff. There's a lot of applications out there that do each of those different functions, just for examples. I would say the best thing that we can do as a human resources environment, or even insurance and just organizations, is to start with policy. So if your organization isn't ready for conversations around how to utilize it, or maybe we aren't ready from a resource standpoint, although a lot of them are free, if we aren't ready to execute or implement on this, especially in highly regulated environments, and I know that you work with a lot of organizations that are, then start with a governance policy. Put a policy in place, run a beta internally before you do it externally. Before you put a chat bot out to all of your clients, then run it internally to your staff and do it through FAQs and see what happens, like work through all the kinks. Because one of the things with artificial intelligence we can't forget is it's still garbage in, garbage out, right? Totally. And so it is learning from you, from us. And so if it doesn't learn the good stuff, then it's going to continue to produce bad stuff. So one example of that is I work with an organization that has a call center, and they execute it in the call center. And then it made inferences based upon their membership based on the calls that were had, right? And so you'd think that'd be a good thing, except who calls customer service?
Cranky people.
Well, but who calls customer service? Not your happiest members. Right. Not the most sophisticated, not the people that are self-sufficient or have independence or use technology, right? They're the people that need help. And so it ended up making assumptions about the overall membership base that weren't accurate, and they weren't representative of the whole group. Yeah. And so we have to be careful of some of that. So I think that HR's role in that is, one, with governance and policy, but two, with instituting a bit of emotional intelligence into the world of artificial intelligence.
I love that. I think as you know, and God bless you for the support of the podcast, but we try to keep our commitment to bite-sized and digestible. So just on the way out, maybe to bring us home, any final thoughts, anything that you're like, I'm really grateful you checked in with me, Toby. As I'm out there speaking, I've been talking about this topic or that topic, and it's just a really interesting thing to get out on.
I think the best thing is to leave everybody with action, right? Doing more and leads to doing better. Practice leads to mastery. Get out and try it. So whether it's human resources strategies, whether it's diversity conversations, whether it's artificial intelligence, then make sure you go out and do and try and become. Because the more that we can do that as a team, the more we can lean into frustration and learn from our mistakes and challenge one another, the better off we'll be.
I appreciate every moment of this, and I cannot thank you enough for being so generous with your time and wisdom. I really appreciate it. That's all the time we have this week on the podcast. Thank you to our sponsors, TrueHue and Excel Health. Thank you to you guys for watching. Join us next week. Join us every week. And until next week, make this the best week yet.